Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and so for a couple of years I've seen this dude pop up on my Facebook and YouTube newsfeed with a 13-year-old Fu Manchu mustache and goatee. I found him too annoying to listen to for more than a few moments. It was clear that the guy was simply a self-obsessed, government-loving talking head. Well, when I saw that he did a video called The Religion of Libertarianism, attempting to debunk libertarianism, I knew I had to face the music and watch. Well, I watched, and I don't think I've ever seen more logical fallacies and straw men in one short video in my life. Even the title is hilariously ironic. The Religion of Libertarianism? Believing in individual freedom is a religion, but having blind faith in some people with a pen, paper, and army chosen by the majority to enforce its will on the minority isn't a religion? Okay then. In this video, I'm going to debunk everything he says, because folks, it's just too easy. Let's do this. The video opens up with Larry Elder, a man I know personally and a man who is not a libertarian despite what he may say, being a huge supporter of the Iraq war and police state. Sorry, Larry. It's a clip from one of the US Libertarian Party debates. Now, first of all, confusing a party name with an ideology is often a major fail. The US Libertarian Party is not representative of libertarianism. There are some good people in the party, and I have a lot of praise for the work of, for example, Michael Heiss of the Mises Caucus, but overall, the party is filled with career politicians from both the left and the right, and very few outside of that statist paradigm. It's like the Conservative Party in Canada, raising taxes, or the Liberal Party's history of supporting war, again in Canada. It's all just a thin fog of deception and government growing their collectivist control complex. So the clip from the debate carefully shows candidates for the Libertarian Party nomination saying we don't need a driver's license, other than Gary Johnson, who then gets booed for suggesting people should do some sort of litmus test.
You know, I'd like to see some competency exhibited by people before they drive.
Matt Lieb, the fuzzy-faced host of the video, then says that libertarians believe the path to Stalinism is paved with driver's licenses. Well, no one has ever said that to my knowledge. It's hardly the #1 issue voluntarist libertarians think about. It needs to be put in context with an end to monopoly creating regulations, taxation, legal tender laws, and central banks, bringing things down to the individual demand of the product, that product being the individual themselves, and their demand on the market. How people feel about them, their conduct, their actions, etc. Putting people's lives in danger is frowned upon in any situation, and one does not need a giant organized crime cartel telling them what to do. Voluntary societies can deal with this issue very easily under the private contract. Now, moving on. I don't want to get too carried away yet. I'm only like 20 seconds into the video so far. Though I do want to make note of the guy's use of the word dangerous to describe libertarians, as it's eerily reminiscent of the old reefer madness propaganda technique of embellishing, making assumptions, taking things out of context, and using straw men, then using the word dangerous as if something needs to be done about it, about these, rascally libertarians. He also immediately collectively calls libertarians whack jobs at the beginning of the video. Good argument, dude. Lieb then says that libertarianism is a religion where the Lord and Savior is pure, unadulterated capitalism. I'm sensing at this point that he's going to completely misdefine capitalism. So, more importantly, no, capitalism isn't our Lord and Savior. That's absurd. We base our belief on individual liberty and freedom. In a truly free market capitalistic system, individuals vote with their dollar for the best products at the best price, allowing for great competition and innovation. Corporations do bad things and they're replaced by a better version of their business model by someone else who treats customers and people in general much better. That includes their employees. With this, the medical industry. Every industry could grow and transform at a rapid rate, always growing cheaper and more efficient. More competition, more innovation, more productivity, more employment, higher cash flow, higher wages, and it goes in a circle from there. So believing in the voluntary vote of the dollar is bad, but thinking the majority of people, the 51%, know what's best for the 49% and should be able to enforce their will on those people, that's good? Two wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for dinner? Pretty big double standard there. Okay, moving on. Lieb then says that libertarians spend all their time shrieking about taxes. He shows clips of candidates for the Libertarian Party saying taxation is theft. So Lieb takes that and says that taxation is just like theft, except for instead of taking your TV like a burglar, they take your garbage away. No. Taxation is literally theft and extortion. If you refuse to pay, they throw you in a cage and ruin your life. In many countries, people pay a good 50+% of their money to taxation. In Britain in the 60s, they saw a tax rate of 95%. The only good that came of it was, a great Beatles song called Taxman. 1 for you, 19 for me. People will often say, if you don't like it, move. Where? First, you got to deal with immigration, and second, it's then basically a collective saying that if you do not like being robbed, you should go sail off into the ocean in exile and die. You can't just escape to the woods anymore. You'll be found and extorted more. You can't just find an unused plot of land somewhere and stick a stake in it anymore. You'll be arrested. They'll want property taxes. They'll bring the Bureau of Land Management in. Imagine 20 people, one including yourself, voting on whether you should keep your hard-earned money. 19 of them say they should take your money away. You say no, but by the logic of statists like Lieb, it's totally fair that they take your money because there are more of them than you. They're deciding your fate. You can't spend that money on something productive or great for society or yourself for that matter, feeding your family, etc. No, they know what's best for you, so they're going to take your money away and leave you poor. That's what the government is doing on a far more vast scale. Except instead of redistributing it to, the poor, they mainly use it to pay off the interest on the debt created at the printing of fraudulent fiat currency at the Federal Reserve, for example. As well as war, killing millions over the past 20 years, a large percentage of those children. A tiny, tiny, tiny fraction goes towards roads, for example, an invention that historically private companies have been better at building, leaving longer lasting roads maintained voluntarily by the public. In a voluntary society, we would see people pay into the fund voluntarily and keep the road in good shape. People would have more money to spend and their currency would be worth more if their money wasn't being stolen and sent to fund wars and pay off fraudulent debts. The companies involved need the demand of the individuals, so there's incentive to do a good job too. Duh. And the same goes for helping the disabled and sick with voluntary community funds. Hey leftists, if you love taxes so much, then what are you worried about? Surely you'd all donate just as much money to projects without taxes, wouldn't you? Well, probably not, but you wouldn't need to. The purchasing power of your competing non-legal tender currencies would be much higher and based in subjective value, scarcity, application use, and demand. A tiny fraction of the funds would be necessary and would do far greater things without bureaucracy. Okay, moving on. I'm only a minute and 35 seconds in. Now, Lieb uses bridges, schools, firefighters, roads, etc. in his argument for taxation. You don't need government for bridges for the same reasons I previously listed. Schools are indoctrination camps and waste the most important part of a person's life, the period in which they learn the most. Public schools simply indoctrinate them with collectivist mantra and stand in the way of children actually mapping out their life and ambitions. It's a sick joke. The most important years for development out the window. I left school in 9th grade and I learned more in my first month out of school than I had in all the years I went to school combined. I love learning. I picked up books. I learned about what I wanted to learn about, and I didn't end up in the Einstein equation of a monkey, a giraffe, and a zebra all being tested for who can climb a tree the fastest. I now travel, own my own media, spend my time talking to people about economics and individual freedom, all on a dime I pay myself, and I couldn't be happier. The most successful people in history have either flunked or dropped out of school. So spare me the sanctimonious emotional talking points about school. It's garbage. Volunteer firefighters are great, and as Tim Moen, a firefighter, paramedic, and leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada says, volunteer or private firefighters are far more efficient and have to deal with less ridiculous red tape. We interviewed him about that very topic, as a matter of fact. Something I think most of you should check out if you don't believe me. The left also loves to hate police, yet it's often the first argument they make. What about the police? Well, if you have several competing private police forces within a voluntary society, you end up with the need for individual demand of the public. With government, they're mercenaries. They can get away with almost anything. Look at the problems we've seen in the culture war in the United States over the past 30 years, especially. Police brutality, use of force, all enforcing ridiculous government laws or overreacting to certain arbitrary situations. If the police forces were protectorates agreed to by the public on the private contract, they'd be funded by the public. We can set up our own societal rules for funding again on the private contract to avoid any intervention by nefarious groups. And if they went and beat innocent people to death, they'd lose demand, funding, and they'd be abolished. In the case of government police, they'd get, a few weeks paid vacation for murder. How on earth is that a better alternative? Lieb then plays a clip of Libertarian Party candidates talking about roads and shows Austin Peterson, who I find most libertarians can't actually stand, saying that where we're going, we don't need roads. Yeah, well, that was kind of a joke, Lieb. Could spot it from a mile away. Apparently you couldn't. Though there is the context of flying cars and whatnot, inventions that have been held back for decades by government, regulations, and legislation. Not to mention government monopolization of massive corporations, pushing small businesses out of the market by implementing, regulations and taxes the big corporations can deal with, while the small businesses, of course, they simply can't. Anyways, I don't want to get too repetitive here. I've already gone over roads in this video. Moving on, Lieb says, and I quote, libertarians have an almost cult-like adherence to the idea that government is bad and the free market is God. I mean good. I mean God, end quote. Dude, what's more cultish than believing in some churchy entity called government doing everything for us, completely depending on them, singing their national anthem or hymn, saluting their flag or cross, going to their schools or churches, launching their wars or crusades. Get your head out of your butt, buddy. You are inflicted with a serious disease, the disease of statism. I don't blame you. You can't imagine a world without government as, well, you've never witnessed it. And instead of considering it, you fall for such horrible strawmen as you have in this video. Anyways, carrying on. He then shows Gary Johnson talking about healthcare, which is a mistake from the get-go because, well, Gary Johnson doesn't understand the free market. He's spent too many years in government and is what some may call a pragmatist, what I personally call conveniently inconsistent. Gary Johnson mentions having a pay-as-you-go health insurance system where we'd have stitches are us and gallbladders are us. Yeah, not a good explanation at all. Today, money is stolen from the populace to give to a few major pharmaceutical rackets, which then pump the price up of medications and certain procedures. I'm now speaking of the Canadian healthcare system, which is so-called free. What's not covered is impossible to afford. What is covered is constantly funded more and more, inflating the price of the medicine, creating the problem that the healthcare system was sent to solve in the first place. It's a never-ending Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat. The funding of healthcare and monopolization of the pharmaceutical giants is what causes it to be so expensive in the first place. Interestingly enough, leftists seem to hate Big Pharma. Weird how they support enslavement only when it benefits them individually. Pretty selfish and greedy, if you ask me. In a free market healthcare system, once again, you'd have competition for the best product at the best price, therefore creating incentive to create great new marvels and treatments with countless choices. Innovation would run wild, and once again, people would have more money. Their purchasing power would be greater, and they would be far more capable of donating to the sick and elderly a regular amount of money monthly, completely voluntarily. All stuff I've spoken of in depth in past videos. Now, Lieb then plays a video of John McAfee talking about how people would never pass a drowning child and do nothing or not help their neighbor in a life or death situation. Lieb believes that optimism to be delusional. He says this notion that people will help each other is not based in fact. This comes from the same strain of thought that individuals or capitalists are greedy for wanting to keep their hard-earned money, but all the while, these same people think it's fair to steal money via taxation to pay for things they want. Imagine being so selfish in your ideology that you'd want to force everyone to support it, or else be thrown in a cage at gunpoint. You better pay up, folks. Lieb selfishly wants you to pay for his garbage pickup and sidewalk, or else. This snide arrogance of leftists and conservatives alike to believe that people who don't like their ideas must be forced to accept it or else they're quote-unquote greedy or selfish is so incredibly absurd. Also, Lieb's claim that it's untrue that businesses will be ethical based in individual demand, how's that working out without individual demand? With government force today, fraud sky high. People simply get more poor the more government involvement comes into the picture. Instead, we're supposed to depend on government, the biggest polluter throughout all mankind, the biggest murderer throughout all mankind, and the most corrupted, aristocratic, authoritarian entity to ever exist to do a better job by force than businesses can do on the free market voluntarily. Oh, I see. Lieb's claim that these libertarian ideas have nothing to back them up is not an argument at all, by the way. It's completely void of an argument and is an assumption. It seems Lieb didn't want to actually spend time looking at historical examples because it wouldn't benefit his point. The book Private Governance by Edward Stringham is so full of footnotes covering the history of free market examples of alternatives to government that it's impossible to go one page of the book without learning another historical fact. The information is out there. Shame on people who are so caught up in confirmation bias that they refuse to even turn a single page. Lieb then says that believing in the free market is like believing Santa is real. You mean kind of like how you believe the government is real and that instead of mommy and daddy secretly going broke to give you the illusion of free things on Christmas Day from an entity always watching you, everyone else's parents are robbed instead to keep up the illusion? Yeah, Santa Marks is great, if you're him, that is. Living off of the capitalists until the capitalists run out of money to be stolen and starvation and typhus break out. Anyways, back to the video. Lieb then draws a weird conclusion from Austin Peterson saying he believes in gay married couples protecting their weed farms with machine guns. Lieb insinuates that if weed's legal, the world would be more dangerous, so you'd need machine guns. I don't think I even need to dig deep into that one. It's far too easy. But tell that to the cartels that were given semi-autos and autos by the government for decades as the government cracked down on drugs in the United States, kicked hemp out of the market, monopolized Standard Oil, and created the perfect environment for the black market they just armed. Lieb then makes a bunch of strange points about libertarians being racist because of property rights, as Rand Paul said he abhors racism but doesn't believe the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is right, as it forced private businesses to accept business that they didn't want. Look, wouldn't you want businesses to be allowed to say no blacks? If you're black, why would you want to eat there? The rest of us, for the most part, would find the place incredibly distasteful in this day and age, and public demand would lead to them going out of business. Wouldn't you rather know who your enemy is than eat their spit-filled food unknowingly? It seems pretty obvious. Forced diversity strangely leads to more divide. Ironic, isn't it? Look at the race wars going on today, completely propagated by the media for decades. Lieb then says libertarians are like the Stalinists of the right. Well, perhaps some of the minarchist libertarians are, but most libertarians these days don't believe in coercive collectivism. They wouldn't be part of that circular, conjoined spectrum of statism. Lieb says that 11% of Americans identify as libertarians, saying that if 11% of Americans supported Kim Jong-un, there would be a state of emergency. Actually, I'm pretty sure the government would love that. If everyone bowed on their knees to the state like the North Koreans, the state would be in heaven. Well, hell for the rest of us. So, what are you trying to say, Lieb? That this is worthy of a state of emergency? Meh. I won't take you out of context due to your convenient phrasing. I'm not you. Also, dude, your claim that libertarians worship Ayn Rand is simply untrue. A small fraction of libertarians are supportive of Ayn Rand. Most I find are not big fans. Objectivism and voluntarism, for example, are quite far apart, but that's a conversation for another video. Supporting someone's work or theoretical philosophy also does not equal worship. Now, Lieb goes into how libertarianism is largely supported by the ultra-rich. A statistical impossibility, but I also certainly wouldn't blame rich people for being libertarians after tens of millions of dollars were stolen from them. Imagine losing as much money as people make in 10 lifetimes in 1 month. How would you feel? He then uses Peter Thiel, a Trump supporter who goes to Bilderberg, as an example. Try again, buddy. Then he uses the 4-year deceased Richard Mellon Scaife as an example. The guy who worked with the Koch brothers to fund the Tea Party. Yeah, and the same people who turned the movement into a bunch of teabag-wearing lovers of neoconservatism. Try again. Oh wait, he had no other examples. Okay. He then compares libertarians talking about ending the Department of Education and the EPA to Republicans saying similar things. Yeah, that's the influence of libertarians alerting many Republicans to the fact that they need to appeal to the ideology in order to get votes. All futile, considering everyone he shows in the video lost because most libertarians don't vote for puppets, pandering to them. To be fair, he does show Trump saying he will cut the size of the Department of Education. Well, it's true, a lot of so-called libertarians fell head over heels for Trump as a so-called anti-establishment candidate that appealed to libertarians. I think most of those people now have their tail between their legs if they haven't been completely brainwashed by the media to support him, due to the media's constant attacks on him with obviously false stories. Good maneuver. Reverse psychology. Lieb then admits that Trump hasn't actually cut any departments. But he says him bringing Betsy DeVos and Scott Pruitt into his administration was like putting time bombs in the Department of Education and the EPA. Why? Because Betsy DeVos is anti-public school indoctrination? Good. And why? Because Scott Pruitt constantly sued the EPA for their schemes to seize more power and tax people more? Good. Unfortunately, they've done little about these issues since. Another example of how government is not the answer. Individuals are. Oh wait, he just used more examples of libertarian billionaires. Okay, let's see who he mentions now. Elon Musk, the Obama-supporting guy who left in protest of Trump from the Businesses Council because he didn't sign the globalist Paris Agreement? Hardly a libertarian, though I admit I have a soft spot for him, as I mentioned in a recent report. The other example is the former CEO of Uber, who I don't actually know much about, but Uber's awesome. What's your problem? You like the taxi monopolies? Uber has allowed so many to work between work, make more money, and give people a lower cost option. It's the beauty of the market. Too bad government has banned Uber and Lyft in so many damn places. Lieb then says that most of these examples of capitalist solutions are caused by capitalism in the first place. No, it isn't, but please elaborate. Oh wait, you don't, you just changed the subject. Okay? He then goes on to say capitalism causes racism, classism, and sexism. Okay, examples of individual demand and competition doing these things? Oh, again, no examples. Must just feel nice for him to say this in order to make himself feel like he's making a point while pandering to his audience. He has not made a single argument in this video so far, and we're nearing the end of the video. Lieb then says he doesn't hate libertarians and that his best parents are libertarian. Okay, he then says he respects the ideology in a lot of ways, kind of like the Branch Davidians and ISIS. Well, isn't that cute? As we wrap up the video, his conclusion is basically we should not allow these libertarians so close to power. We don't want power. You've missed the entire point, dude. I don't want to force my beliefs on you, and I don't want you to enforce your will on me. This is about the non-aggression principle, and of course people will break it, but there's a conversation to be had about every single problem that may arise, which pales in comparison to a murderous, forceful, organized crime racket with the worship of the collective supporting their sports teams, their team colors, their different flavors of the same problem. The religion of statism is alive and well in this notion that freedom is a cultish religion. We must be scaring statists if this is the absurd response we get. Like scared mice. We are the most accepting of every ideology under the private contract. We believe in your right to form governance the way you wish as long as it's under the private contract and not enforced on free individuals. We are intrinsically free. We've just fallen for this massive control complex because we cannot imagine a world without it. We've centralized everything. We've become dependent on the system that thrives off of our dependence. We can't imagine that a system can exist without force, that individuals can interact freely. We always look to government with glassy eyes as the solution to the problems we aren't aware are caused by government and collective enforcement in the first place. Government cannot give us freedom. They can only take it from us. They exist as an entity dependent on stolen funds and continued servitude, which they emanate from fear in school and the media. They emanate by monetary control, destruction of wealth, destruction of competitive markets, destruction of unity, war, colonization, power. They then see the results, the flaming cities before their eyes, and point their fingers at us. They did it, they claim. They're racist, they're bigots, they're rich, they're poor, they're blind, they're deaf, they pollute, they're unfair, they're independent, they rule themselves. Yeah, that's more like it. They're independent and they rule themselves. That's what they're afraid of. That doesn't benefit them. They'd rather stick with the previous arguments at face value. That way they can divide the populace, drive them against each other, cause them to fight themselves instead of the real enemy of statism, and then swoop in as the hero, there to fix the problems of chaos in society, to share its milk with the subservient, desperate populace. Always remember, you are free. They are slave masters. The lesser of evil is still evil. They will not fix the problems. You will. You and your friends, your family, your neighbors, the complete strangers down the block. The problems we see today exist with government. They're not going to be solved by more government. Break free, good people. Break free. Thanks for watching this somewhat late response to this attempted debunking of libertarianism. Matt Lieb, come with more effort next time. You provided zero evidence. You attacked people personally. Came up with conclusions out of context or based on non-existing examples. Filled spaces with completely made-up synopsis. Drew straw men and then used the Libertarian Party as an example of the libertarian ideology. When you do that, you're going to have a bad time. Try again. Or continue making annoying videos. Whatever. To each their own. Just stop advocating, extorting me, and forcing me into your mindset. You have no right to do that. It's not only illogical, it's immoral. I hope someone can cure you of your cultish obsession with the religion of statism. See what I did there? Stay tuned for more from Wham. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized by YouTube as I bring in the ADL to flag all of our content as hate speech. Also check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out at Steemit at Josh Sigurdson, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency, Steem that is. So don't forget to check us out there and find us at Anarchapulco 2019. I know it's early, but this is such an exciting event coming up with Ron Paul, Judge Napolitano, David Icke, Larkin Rose, Jeff Berwick, you know, all the usual characters, and it's going to be amazing. So we hope to see you there. Make sure to check the link for Anarchapulco below and use promo code WHAM to save as much as 15% on your tickets. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.